Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, after Robert Jenrick became the reincarnation of Enoch Powell and explicitly attacked as a bad thing people living in Britain who were not white, Keir Starmer has said it's hard to take him seriously. But is that right? Robert Jenrick is not a serious man, but neither is Nigel Farage, and yet his impact has had very serious implications for the country and continues to drag us down as a country. If Robert Jenrick becomes Tory leader, with that higher profile, could he effectively tag team with Farage to cause even more damage to our politics and society? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So Starmer says it's hard to take Jenrick seriously. For those who missed it, Jenrick's latest attempt to raise his profile using shock value statements is to say there are parts of Birmingham where you wouldn't see another white face. Starmer suggested that Jenrick was still in leadership campaign mode, which is absolutely true. But outside the Conservative Party, the motivation for his behaviour is less important than the impact it can have. If he becomes Tory leader, he has the platform of official leader of the opposition. It seems clear that he is willing to be as extreme as it takes to further his own ambitions. He's now gone full Enoch Powell, equating the colour of someone's skin with whether they should be considered a worthy neighbour. Not a peep about this from his non-white party leader or his previous non-white party leader. Would Jenrick run the risk of further normalising the sort of bigotry which a generation ago we had been declining from, at least in public? He'd be able to push these sorts of lines in every political and current affairs programme on television if he thought success depended on being more openly racist than Farage, which on the evidence of his behaviour over the past year he seems to. Or does the irrelevancy of the Tories mean that nobody would really pay attention? I mean, let's look what I mean here. Relevance is incredibly important for political commentary, just as it is for politics itself. For example, which of my videos get engagement and which don't? Well, beyond the psychology, which I discussed in recent weeks, there are, I suppose, two main factors for a specific video: interest and relevancy for your audience. So you can have a video that's very interesting and very relevant for one audience, does really well. If I were to do it, might flop because it's neither. You can almost say that the success of a video depends on multiplying those two factors together. You basically need both of them to score well with your audience if you want the video to do well, broadly speaking. For example, I might choose to discuss a topic which is relevant to my audience, but not particularly interesting. Maybe some detailed breakdown of like some new tax rules or trade agreements in like minute detail. Similarly, I might choose a subject which has a lot of interest, but not seen as relevant to my audience. For example, some of the stuff going on in America does well if people in Europe see the link to our own futures, but bombs hard if they don't. Relevance and interest both seem to be crucial ingredients. I used to get a lot of engagement from pointing out the flaws in Tory logic, which suggests that that is both interesting and relevant to my audience. But it doesn't so much these days, even though I know this week I've been doing a bit on it, but Tory party conference. So why is that? So it must surely have the same level of interest. So what about the relevancy? Well, a couple of years ago, the Tories were in government, and what they did and said had real world consequences to much of my audience. I mean, look what happened to people's pension pots when Liz Truss told Kwasi Kwarteng to stand up and open his mouth. Literally just saying words destroyed so much pension value. Remember, they didn't actually implement anything. They just said things. And your pension was reduced in value by a third. But not now. Not only are they in opposition, but nobody believes the current leader is ever going to be Prime Minister or her successor, or in all probability, their successor either. In fact, it would not be a crazy thing to suggest that the next Conservative Prime Minister might not even be an MP yet. In fact, some people have said exactly that without raising eyebrows. It's readily believed. I personally still think the Canada merger is as likely as anything. So you get a bit of a sense from the sort of viewers who watch my content that, yeah, sure, this Tory idea sounds horrific, but they have zero chance of being in position to implement it anytime in the next decade, which puts the relevancy factor at close to zero, which means videos debunking Tory economics or immigration policies are struggling to compete with videos on watching grass grow in real time. And Conservatives themselves seem to feel the same way. What is the single most important policy area for key voters? Well, it's the economy. And the economy, of course, is where the Conservatives naturally tend to be stronger. Not because of their ideas, people just have it in their heads that the Tories are by and large default better for the economy. So the Tory Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, setting out his party's economic strategy at long last, must have been eagerly anticipated by the party faithful then. No, not so much. So many empty seats during his keynote speech, and this is from the Conservatives, so committed to the party that they not only paid to be members, but they took the time and expense to travel to Manchester to attend the conference. They couldn't be asked to listen to one of the most important speeches to their future prospects. This speaks of a lack of belief in their own party right now, and who can blame them? It wasn't much better at Robert Jenrick's speech, although there were more bums on seats there. I mean, he's supposed to be the firebrand who will depose Badenoch and finally take the fight to Nigel Farage by, well, being like Nigel Farage without a cigarette on the go, I guess. And he really made an effort. I mean, he brought a judicial wig and he pretended to be a ventriloquist with it. At least that's what I'm assuming he did with it. I didn't actually listen to the speech, but he certainly looked like he was talking to it to me. So he brought props and everything, really made an effort, and yet to no avail. Even he couldn't pack the punters in, and he's supposed to be their great white hope. So if Jenrick cannot attract the attention of his party's most committed supporters, you know, the ones who go to the lengths of attending conference, his Starmer may be right. Would Robert Jenrick, as Tory leader, be considered just as irrelevant as Badenoch and do no greater harm than he's already doing with anything he says because no one will listen to it? Other than, of course, conceding ground to Reform UK. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind-the-scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.